welcome to episode 219 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Lydia Creech,
Jessica Carr,
Diana Rogers.
And in today's episode, we will be talking about movies that we saw this week in part 1. And in part 2, we will be concluding our Horror by Women series with 2017's Raw. It's, the horror season is over. We're now in November. I would say we're in noir November, but it looks like we're going to be in Nicholas Ray November here in Cinematary. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. That's the term that I coined for this month because
yes,
it was super clever. Before we get started, though, I want to make some plugs on a lot of the stuff that we were doing on Cinematary. This past month, we kicked off the month with our giant TIFF coverage, which if you didn't see that, please go online and check it out. We have individual reviews as well as a long dialogue of us talking about the many movies that we saw over the course of the festival. But then we also had our Re-Fear series. We had Return of the Living Dead in 1985 by Nathan. We had the 2013 Carrie written by Andrew. We had the 1998 remake of Psycho by Reed. Courtney wrote about Candyman 2 Farewell to the Flesh. We of course we talked about the first Candyman on a horror series last year. I wrote about Jaws 2. We also had a rundown of the Knoxville Horror Film Festival by Jordan and Andrew. The Haunting of Hill House by Clement Hoser on I think this is the new series on Netflix. And then finally we had the Halloween 2 Rob Zombie version dialogue between Nathan and Mike Thorne. And Mike Thorne also had his top 10 horror list for film Twitter, but it ranged with over 150 movies, but he had the top 10 films according to horror films according to film Twitter that was also posted on the site, as well as my video essay From Caligari to Laika, which is looking at the German Expressionist movement and comparing it to stop motion animation, specifically the work of Laika Studios. So all of that stuff is on cinematary.com. I would recommend checking it out. But it was Halloween this past week, and Jessica wants to go over some Halloween costumes because a lot of movie-themed Halloween costumes were put on by this Cinematary crew.
Yes, before we do that, I also want to mention that October was our second most successful month ever for the website. So we had 2,947 page views, which is our second highest ever. So congrats to everyone who contributed writing. And I'm just so proud of Cinematary. We're finally getting good writing in there. And I know that was one of our goals. So hooray!
We only had bad writing before. It was all just crap. Now we're hitting our stride.
And concluding October, we could talk about our Halloween costumes because Lydia had such a cool costume and we all went to a party together. I dressed up as Susie with my boyfriend. He dressed up as Sam from Moonrise Kingdom. So that was fun. And then Lydia dressed up as Elle Fanning's character from Neon Demon. And I literally watched Dylan pour fake blood all over her. And it was made of was it chocolate syrup?
Yeah, it's corn syrup, chocolate syrup, and some red food dye. Real sticky. I had to throw the costume away. I was like, we're done with this now.
Yeah, so shout out to those Halloween costumes. Zach, did you dress up as anything?
I dressed up as a journalist.
One of the dipshit reporters who gets killed at the beginning of new Halloween podcasters.
That was me. I had the Michael Myers mask, and I was like, Michael, do you feel anything? And I was holding it out, yelling at people, and they were like, sir, this is a Wendy's. So that was my Halloween. I was just scaring people. Which I guess is the point, who knows?
Yes, spooky.
I was spooking people out. Well, let's go ahead and kick off movies that we saw this week. We covered this one last week, so I'll be very quick. But at the Savannah Film Festival this past week, I caught Anna and the Apocalypse. I know Jordan and Andrew were big fans of this movie at the Knoxville Horror Film Festival and wrote about it in their write-up and talked a little bit about it on the podcast last week. I had a chance to talk to Ella Hunt, the lead actress, who was very sweet and was talking about... I asked her about the whole comparison progressing with this movie to being part Shaun of the Dead, part La La Land. And she was like, yeah, I agree with that to an extent. But she told me this story about how one of the writers, they got the concept for this movie. For those who don't know, it's pretty much, it's a sleepy town in Scotland. It's on Christmas, and out of nowhere, this epidemic breaks out, and people are turning into zombies. And kind of much like Shaun of the Dead, they're having to fight their way out and try to escape the town without getting bitten. And she was saying that and at the same time, they're also having a musical. People are singing and dancing and everything. And so she said that one of the writers was watching High School Musical and was like, well, this is just shit. But
you know what this needs?
You know what this needs? If Zac Efron was bit by a zombie, this would be a whole better movie. And so that's kind of what this is. I know Andrew and Jordan talked about how it does have this kind of Disney Channel quality to it. And they were saying that as a compliment. And it's true. It does. Like, it feels like, especially at the beginning, to kind of have this, it has this kind of High School Musicalness to it. There's all of these kind of different relationships and kind of typical high school kid drama that or not even typical high school kid drama, but very
like all the cliques or whatever.
very Disney Channel high school drama going on. And that's what makes it such a fun movie, because you have all of that and you're not really sure what to do with it. And then you still have these musical numbers and people are dancing and talking about, I just want to get out of this place. And then it just all like explodes, and there's zombies and they're having to kill zombies, and it gets very graphic, and where they're, having to stab the zombies. And that it opens the whole zombie apocalypse with this scene that is very reminiscent of the Shaun of the Dead scene, where he is walking to the convenience store, not recognizing that all of these zombies are out there. But in this one, Ella Hunt's character Anna has her headphones in and is like dancing to this wonderful pop number as she's like skipping and saying it's a brand new day. And while she's doing that, zombies are running, cars are running into stuff, people are being eaten. It's just a blast. The songs are very catchy. I know Andrew described them as kind of like a Carly Rae Jepsen album. They do have that real genuine poppiness to them. I really had a fun time. There's a musical number near the end where she's fighting all of these zombies, and it has this kind of back and forth duet-ish thing with the principal, who is kind of the villain of the movie outside of the zombies. That's actually very well choreographed and kind of a fun time. It's a real blast. I asked her a little bit of, it's kind of one of those original fun movies that probably won't like have wide appeal, because the general audience is very boring and wants to just go see another like superhero movie. But I see this having kind of a cult appeal. I think that I could see people really getting into the characters. They have very distinct looks. One has like these Christmas sweaters that light up. She has this candy cane weapon. I think that it could be this kind of this cult hit in the vein of like a Rocky Horror Picture Show, where people go and watch Anna and the Apocalypse and sing along and throw candy canes and all that stuff. So yeah, I would assume this will be on like VOD or something at some point soon. But if you're able to go see,
I hope St. Louis gets it.
Yeah, if you're able to go see Anna and the Apocalypse, it's a good Halloween movie. It's a good Christmas movie. It's a real fun time. She was talking about how she had people who love musicals but hate horror movies who love the movie, and people who love horror movies but hate musicals who love the movie. It kind of treads this fine line and is really fun. Has this very irreverent UK humor and wit to it. High recommend on Anna and the Apocalypse. I kept wanting to say Anna versus the Apocalypse, which she said I was okay to say. So Anna and the Apocalypse. I would check it out. I could also see this popping up on Hulu, because Hulu's been very good at getting these kind of cult indie movies on their streaming service. But the other movie I wanted to talk about was, and I know Diana and Lydia, you guys caught this as well, at least in the last year or so, or at least this month. And that's Happy Death Day. It's a Blumhouse production. It's directed by Christopher Landon, who's most well known for The Scout's Guide to the Apocalypse, that big time hit. This one stars Jessica Roth, who I was looking at her IMDb, and she was one of the friends that dances with Emma Stone in La La Land, which is like the second movie I've seen recently where one of those actresses like has broken out into their own lead role. I don't know if that's like a thing where all of the different women who dance with Emma Stone in that sequence in La La Land are gonna like break out. Yeah, I don't know. It's a whole. I guess that's maybe like a whole breakout group, but whatever. She's fantastic in this lead role. But pretty much the gist of this is it's like Groundhog Day, but with a slasher movie. And she is this college student. She's kind of a jerk. And she's going through her day, which is her birthday. And at the end, she is murdered. But when she's murdered, she wakes up and starts replaying the day. And so it's Groundhog Day. She keeps having to replay the day where every time at the end, this slasher comes and kills her. There's something really interesting about the effectiveness of I don't know if there's kind of like a psychological term for it outside of just calling it the Groundhog Day effect, because you have movies that have just kind of taken this on, something like Edge of Tomorrow, the Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt movie, which uses the same formula to kind of work. And there's something very, I don't know. There's something very charming and effective about it because it gives you this. I don't know. I was thinking while watching the movie about what it kind of says about morality in how humans can improve. Like the only way we can improve as humans is to have a Groundhog Day situation like this, where we're either having to repeat the day or we're having to be killed at the end of the day and then repeat the day, because it's in every one of these movies it's always they're having to improve themselves as a person, and this is no different. But I do think that that model really adapts itself very well to the slasher. But Lydia, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
I think just what we find as audience just like find so delightful about the Groundhog Day thing is just like repetition and variation. Like we like to pick patterns out, and then when it changes we're delighted because it surprises us. And like this particular version is like very playful, like very aware of Groundhog Day. It's got a really good gag at the end, I guess, where I'm choosing to believe that she doesn't know that she's lying about not knowing about Groundhog Day.
No, I'm thinking she does. She literally doesn't know, and it's kind of like that film bro, like, you don't know what Groundhog Day is?
Well, that's why it's funnier if she's lying about not knowing, because I would lie to a film bro.
That's true.
If he's like, you don't know Groundhog Day? I'd be like, no, explain it to me. But this one, like, is really hyper aware of it and, like, has a ton of fun with it. Like, she has a day where she just doesn't care. Like, doesn't care at all, and, like, dumps food on her, like, sorority leader or whatever. Like, but then that doesn't work, obviously. I don't know. Diana, you mentioned off mic that it's going to get a sequel, and I don't know how well they can stretch that concept.
No, and it looks like just basically a retread with something where she has to go through the same thing over and over again, but now her friends are going to die also if she doesn't like relive the same day. But it still involves her dying over and over and over again. And so just watching the trailer was exhausting for me because I really did like the movie and was so pleasantly surprised by how charming it was, and how charming and appealing she was. And I don't know. Yeah, I might go see it out of morbid curiosity, but
like I feel like they did all they could with the concept. Like it's a real tight movie. It's not necessarily scary. Before I Fall, which is kind of a similar thing. Like she keeps dying at the end of it and like has to figure out.
It's another
like
Groundhog
that
Day
one's
movie.
Actually, like existentially really horrifying to me because like being trapped in the same day is actually like that's scary. But like this movie doesn't. Happy Death Day doesn't go there.
Well, I thought that the what was so effective about the scares in this one was less that the scares weren't coming from the slasher coming out and stabbing her, but the scare I think that was effective was the act of her having to relive this trauma every day. I think that was kind of what they were trying to get at, where, you know, the first it would gradually just psychologically mess with her, and she was just kind of seeing the world in that way, and it was affecting the way that she was going about it, not only because she was going to regenerate at the end, but also because there's just this person who's out there who has brought harm to her that she knows is going to return and come back and kill her again. And I felt like kind of dealing with that was something that was much more frightening rather than the actual killing that was happening. But at the same time, I guess this is spoilery, but I really didn't like how this movie ended. It first had a really really interesting twist where she kills this murderer who breaks out of the hospital where he's being held, and it's revealed that he's been the guy in the mask that's been after her to kill her. But then she kills him, and she's like, oh, it's over. I've succeeded. But then she wakes up and is repeating the day again, and that immediate shock that she has is really effective.
I kind of would have liked it if the movie ended there,
right? But then they stretch it into revealing that another twist that her roommate actually is angry at her because it's revealed earlier in the movie that the main character has been having this relationship with her professor, who's also this doctor, and her roommate is upset because I guess she has a crush or has a feeling on the doctor, or has feelings for the doctor, and so she's trying. So the reason she's been dying some of the times is because she eats this cupcake that the roommate makes for her birthday that's been laced with poison, and so they have this whole fight that ends the movie. And I felt like that just kind of took the wind out of this really at times kind of revolutionary movie that, like I said, I was really digging the scares aren't coming from the actual bad guy stabbing her. It's coming from just this trauma that's having to be reenacted over and over and over again in her life, and how that's affecting her. And it just felt like that was all taken away when it was like, oh no, it was just both girls like this boy, and that's how it ends. I just felt like that was so, and I guess that comes from, you have a guy director and a guy writer. I would have loved to have seen a female director or writer taking on this story, because it seemed just
like
just
typical.
So, I was
also, I think if they were too afraid to do the terrifying ending, like if she had successfully killed her killer and then still woke up trapped in the same day. That's horrifying. Oh no, nothing I do matters. That wasn't the problem.
This movie needed to be made a year later. 2018, it would have got it. It would have realized. Yeah. I still liked it though. I'll be curious to see what I love the title for the sequel though. Happy Death Day to You. And I think it's centered around Valentine's Day. So I'll be curious to see. I really liked Jessica Roth, the lead actress. I thought she was very good. I'd love to see her in other stuff.
She's really funny.
Yeah, she did a lot of charisma. But Happy Death Day. I think it's on HBO. Check it out. It's a fun little. I felt like kind of under the radar movie from last year.
It's really light.
It's really not that like you said at the beginning, Lydia. I wasn't necessarily frightened by it. But I think that the concept lends itself to being a lot of fun. Lydia, I'm going to pass it over to you, though. You had a movie you want to talk about.
Oh, okay. This is slightly, I guess, related to your German Expressionism project video essay, but I watched the Werner Herzog 1979 remake of Nosferatu, which stars Klaus Kinski, who Herzog worked with a bunch. It's just a straight remake. I wasn't really sure what to expect, but he full on leans into the same like weird, very unattractive Dracula makeup. And like, this movie could be a silent movie. I watched it in German. There's a dub too, an English dub too, but you don't really need it because the visual storytelling, I mean, in the original is so good because it has to be, but then Herzog just like picks all of that up and just puts it back down. I don't know. And so maybe that sounds like, just watch the original. Who cares about a remake? But it's worth it for Klaus Kinski's performance. You saw it too recently, Diane. He's so sad.
It doesn't humanize him, but it kind of expands on the characters, right. and he has a little more complicated kind of motivation for what he's doing, and
he hates being a vampire. And also, I don't remember this from the original, but Herzog like expands this whole like King of the Rats plague or whatever. So when Dracula leaves his castle and like inhabits the town, he also brings with him like coffinfuls of rats and the Black Plague. And so you have these like super creepy shots of like coffins just lining the street, or like funeral processions, and like a horse drops dead like in the middle of a funeral procession, and the town is like slowly emptying out. So it's not just this tragedy that's happening to like Van Helsing and Jonathan Harker and Mina and Lucy, like the people, but like everybody. It's apocalyptic.
And that nice kind of the macabre sort of dream-like imagery is...
The actress who plays Lucy, Herzog switches Mina and Lucy. Lucy's the friend in the original book or whatever. But that actress, Isabel Adjant, she is amazing. She's got these really big eyes and like pale skin and like a narrow face and dark hair. And she's like a silent actress too. The way she like moves her body and does like these really exaggerated big facial expressions, but it works. It's not like hard to watch.
Yeah. No, they're very effective. They're very effective together.
Yes, and because she's his victim, and he's kind of like explains to her, like, I hate being alive. Not those words, but the gist. But I can't die.
One, it's basically like he sees that photograph and he's like, oh, she has such a beautiful neck.
She's
and
pretty.
That's kind of his motivation. Is like, I want to just go like bite her. But there's this whole existential kind of vampire crisis that he's having in the Herzog one, and Kinski was just so great and so expressive. By nothing but his eyes, really. Just
well, because he's got those little like prosthetic, dorky looking, frankly, teeth.
That's like rabbit teeth. Yeah.
I mean, that's how the original is too. But he works around it really well because his like eyes are so sunken in his head. It's really expressive. It's definitely worth checking out. And sometimes Herzog will like do shot for shot kind of remakes of sequences. Like when he's getting into the coffin, he kind of like floats up and then the coffin shuts. Like in the silent version, that's kind of done like in camera, just stopping it so it looks like the lid floats on. And he kind of like he does it again and just, I don't know, it just, the cinematography is so beautiful and just like seeing it in color. I don't know. Those sequences work just as well, and they're kind of impressive.
Very cool. Is it streaming anywhere?
I think it's on Amazon Prime.
Okay. I rented the Blu-ray, so that also looked really good.
Oh, I bet.
But I would recommend it if you haven't gotten around to it. Like, it's absolutely worth checking out.
Well, I wanted to wrap it up with some thoughts from Diana on the new Halloween movie. We talked about it a while back from Toronto, but it's come out in theaters now. It's been making some records. It looks like a sequel is probably on the way, and I'm curious what you made of the movie, because I've heard very mixed reactions from people about this new one.
Yeah, well, so am a fan of the original Halloween. I have never seen any of the sequels or the Rob Zombie remakes, so I really am just familiar with the original 1978 one, which I think is just perfect for what it is because it's so simple and so effective. It does what it sets out to do so well. And I thought this one was kind of like that in the sense that it is pretty straightforward in what it's setting out to do. I liked the sort of examination of Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Laurie, and how she's basically been dealing with kind of PTSD for the last 4 decades and coming to terms with what happened in her first confrontation with Michael and sort of dedicating her life to waiting for this kind of rematch with him. It was interesting. And I appreciated that it was not like the first one. It's not especially gory in the first part. You see a lot of aftermath, and then when the gore kind of amps up towards the end, it's really effective because it's unexpected. I guess it maybe goes a little off the rails for me at the end. It's the kind of thing where I really, really enjoyed it the whole time I was watching it. And then after I saw it, I was like, that just gets a little out of control at the end. But for the most part, I thought it was very well made. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was obviously made by David Gordon Green. Seems to have a genuine affection and is very knowledgeable about the original one. And I appreciated kind of the homages and the asides and the references to the original. And I thought Jamie Lee Curtis was great. So I enjoyed it. I know it's getting review-wise, it seems to be getting great reviews, and I don't necessarily think it's the greatest horror movie ever made. I think for what it is and what it sets out to do, it's pretty good. So that's kind of my take.
I was just going to ask, I don't know if you've rewatched it since the festival, Lydia, but I'm curious if your reaction to it, just kind of simmering on it for so long, has changed any.
I think I've had some time to sit with, as I mentioned when we reviewed the festival, we watched it with the midnight audience, and then since then I've had like a couple other experiences with like midnight audiences, and I think I've mellowed on it a lot more than I had even initially. I will agree with you, Diana, that like it's a good time while you're watching it. Like it's fun, it moves along. Like you said, they obviously like love the series and they love Michael Myers, and I think that's where it's weird for me, right? Zach?
Yeah.
Like,
you're not supposed to love Michael Myers.
But a lot of people do, which is fine. Like, I'm not going to police how you like the Halloween sequels series.
But he's also like a mass murderer, so
He's oddly got so much personality for a guy who never speaks and wears a mask.
So
that's where the affection comes from, is that he's got a little bit of a sense of humor going. But.
So I think like maybe that's where I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, maybe not for me. What about you, that you've had time and like seen, I assume, a lot of different people's takes and reactions to it?
Yeah, I don't like just dislike it. I have kind of simmered on it enough. I think it's fine. I don't think it's anything too remarkable. My point, and I said it whenever we talked about it early on, but the whole movie should have been about these 3 generations of women and trying to work through trauma, starting with Laurie Strode and Jamie Lee Curtis, and then through how she parented her daughter, played by Judy Greer, and then how that's affected Judy Greer's daughter. I felt like if it just focused on those 3 and just, completely got rid of everything else, it would have been a really interesting and really great movie. But they just were trying to recreate a lot of those Halloween moments with some of the high school stuff, and you had the podcasters, and there was just a lot of stuff that could have easily been ditched, that I felt like if you just focused on those 3 women fighting Michael Myers, it would have been a great movie. But I've been saying that now for a while, so.
I think what we've been saying also, like, maybe a woman should have been involved somehow. At the script writing stage, or like producing it, or something.
It's definitely missing that Deborah Hill touch that the original had.
Yeah.
But, what are you gonna do? Maybe they'll get a female team behind it for the sequel, because it's gonna get a sequel. So. All right. Well, is Jessica still here?
Yeah, I'm still here. I don't watch new movies anymore, you guys. It's sad.
It's okay.
I haven't seen any of these movies. I did see Happy Death Day, but I didn't pipe in on that one, so,
Did you like it?
Yeah, I did. My favorite part of Happy Death Day is whenever there's a sorority girl who, yells at her, and she's like, "We don't eat breakfast." That's my favorite part.
That's a good part.
Yeah.
That main sorority girl was my favorite character, because she's just over the top, I'm gonna be a bitch. She made a decision and she ran with it. So
I think she's back for the sequel, so you've got that.
So they're not going to eat breakfast in the sequel either. Okay.
Probably not.
All right, well, we're going to take a short break. We will be back talking Raw after this.
Hello, Cinematary listeners. This is Andrew Swafford with an important message during this break in the show. Cinematary would like you to know that we do not want your money, and we don't want to place ads in the show at this time. That's not why we do this. We do it because we enjoy each other's company and because we want to bring you our pure, unadulterated opinions on the world of cinema. However, there are a few things you can do to help out the show that we would greatly appreciate. Firstly, leave us a review on iTunes, preferably a positive one, because the algorithm gods tell us that reviews increase our podcast exposure. Secondly, send us a tweet at Cinematary, or better yet, send an email to cinematary@yahoo.com so that we can hear from you guys for a change. Maybe you think I'm an idiot for not liking Singing in the Rain, or maybe you have a suggestion of a movie that you really want to hear our opinion on. Regardless, let us know your thoughts, and we'll read them out and respond to them on future episodes of Cinematary. Finally, please share the show with friends and members of your family who you think would enjoy listening to and participating in our film discussions we bring to you guys every week. So to recap, review, send us your thoughts through Twitter and email, and share with your friends and family. We would truly appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to the show.
And we are back with part 2 of episode 219 of Cinematary. In this part, we will be concluding our Horror by Women series with 2017's Raw. It was written and directed by Julia Ducournau. I don't know. We're going to just go with it. Ducournau. It's already, we're 20 seconds in and I've already messed it up. The film stars Garance Maurier, Ella Rumpf, and Laurent Lucas. And the plot follows a young vegetarian's first year at veterinary school when she tastes meat for the first time and develops a craving for flesh, as one does. DeCournau told the playlist that she and her producer started talking about cannibal movies and also space creature films, and why most of them have had unsympathetic or non-human like protagonists. She said, I wanted to create someone you could have empathy for, and I wanted to go from they to I, and I think it's interesting to put the I back into the cannibal just to try and tackle the subject, which is so repulsed by everyone and easily repressed by all of us. It disturbs very deeply because it's talking about our own humanity and what we belong to. She added that, I've also always been very obsessed with bodies, and among all taboos that really challenge our sense of humanity and our vision of humanity, a cannibal is the thing that, of course, only talks about bodies. And since I'm crazy about filming bodies and I'm crazy about talking about the bodily metamorphosis, which in a way really challenges our sense of identity, it was very important to me to try to recreate or add more metamorphosis to my character. In an interview with The Guardian, she said that, I was aware that my body could mutate in unexpected ways, and I have an autonomy. You haven't decided to have a rash, it's your body doing it. So are you your body, or is your body you? This is the kind of thing I always thought about. What does it mean in terms of identity? She mentioned that she was inspired with David Cronenberg's handling of similar material, and that she strives to explore, quote, the human condition with a lot of honesty. I could have made a gore fest with this film, but no, I wanted the audience to feel for her and to understand that it's actually being very human to be like this. On her main character, she told Screen Anarchy, I wanted to put this young woman's sexuality back in her body. I wanted it to be shameless and unapologetic, and aiming at orgasm like any other body when it comes to sexuality. That was incredibly important to me. The second thing with this body is that I try to show it in its very raw triviality. The fact that it's trivial is very important to me, that Justine sweats, that she pukes, that she pees, that she has dark rings under her eyes, and is ugly sometimes and endearing at other times. I always find trivial things to be very endearing. I mean, as I told you, the flaws are how I can have a grasp on the people I write. I really like that, and it works for the bodies as well. The fact that we see her like that, and that she's not sexualized and is not glamorized, helps me take her out of her niche. Like, for instance, Disney's niche of glamorization or sexualization, to show her instead as a universal body. Everyone has hair, sweats, everyone farts. All of a sudden, it's not just a woman's story, it's an everyone's story, because the question that is at the center of my movie is, what is it to be human? And this does not only concern women. To the same point, in an interview with The Independent, she said, I wanted to make a movie about a character who would be relatable and likable, and who in the middle of the movie would do an act which is usually qualified as inhuman. My challenge was to make the audience feel empathy for her, and more than this, to make them understand her, feel for her. In social anthropology, there are 3 taboos of humanity: murder, incest, and cannibalism. On the film, Vulture reviewed it. Raw's exploration of the on-screen potential of cannibalism feels fresh. It's not a brutal practice here so much as a pathetic and sad one, something that inspires as much loathing in the devourer as the devoured. Justine doesn't have the privilege of being undead when she sinks her teeth into another human. She's watching her own descent into animalism just as helplessly as we are. The New York Times wrote, Raw is an astonishingly bold debut feature that embeds cannibalism in a framework of environmental chaos and familial dysfunction. There's no love here and no comfort, yet the movie's genius is to make us feel for Justine. Ultimately, she's just a scared teenager with the world's worst eating disorder. Variety wrote, only a handful of foreign language films without marquee names cross over to cult success in English language speaking territories each year. This deserves to be one of the handful and will be aided by its genre. Good horror doesn't need established stars. Remake rights may well prove part of a raw deal, though there's a spell to the film that could be broken by attempting to cast it a second time. So, on that note, I wanted to kind of start by talking about this point that it seemed like the director was really making with this film, was creating this relatable character with Justine, the lead of the movie. Was she a character that you found likable or relatable? Or I guess, what were y'all's feelings about her as the main character? Go, Lydia.
Well, do we want to start with someone that agrees that she's relatable or someone who disagrees?
No, let's do that.
Okay. Do you want to start with? Okay, so I definitely 100% empathize with Justine's character in this movie. And so, like, I think it really builds with showing her with her parents, because her parents are very detached. Her mom is kind of like an overprotective, like, helicopter-y kind of mom. Like, they show her in the cafeteria, and she, like, Justine, like, accidentally gets a piece of meat, like, in her, I guess it's her mashed potatoes, and her mom just, like, kind of freaks out about it, and she's like, oh no, like, it's fine, it's okay, but her mom gets really upset and really angry, and her parents are kind of detached from her at that point. And so Justine is going through vet school, and she is very uncomfortable in her body. It's very obvious that she is uncomfortable in her own skin. She's shy. She kind of, like, keeps to herself. I really love whenever they start the kind of, like, hazing rituals where she is thrown into, like, this dance club-y kind of environment. So, like, the camera is following her, and she is, like, trying to dodge people, but they're everywhere. And she, like, is basically trying to keep her body, like, as composed as possible, but she's, like, running into these people. There's a guy who she sees that she's going to go talk to, but he's making out with another dude, and so she's, like, gets embarrassed and kind of, like, walks away. And it's not until she runs into her sister that she finds, like, something that's familiar to her, and she starts to kind of seem a little bit more comfortable. So, and then you kind of see, like, that transformation throughout the film. So and it's after she eats meat for the first time, and even after she tastes human meat for the first time, she, like, starts to come into her own body. She has more confidence, especially when she loses her virginity, which is one of my favorite scenes in this whole entire film, because she sleeps with her, I guess it's her roommate or her friend, and she kind of gets, it's kind of funny too, because she's trying to bite him as they're having sex, and she doesn't want to hurt him, so she goes for her own arm instead. And I actually just love looking at that shot by itself, because it really looks like she's biting him if you haven't seen the movie. But if you have seen the movie, you know that she's biting her own arm, which I also think, like, makes her more of an empathetic character, because she is trying to protect him. Like, she has this craving that's uncontrollable, but she doesn't want to hurt other people. And so I think that really adds to her character. And then I think at the end she's fully realized. I think that she knows, like, okay, I have this thing that I have to deal with, and all adults have to deal with it. I think that conversation with her dad really kind of sets that tone, and she knows, okay, like, this is what people have to deal with, and she's more of a fully realized character at that point.
Diana, what about you?
I agree about her coming into her own as the story progresses, and having more agency and kind of coming into, power is not the right word, but just sort of becoming aware of who she is and what she is, and kind of owning that. And it was interesting when I was watching it for the second time. I was thinking about both her and the sister in terms of, you know, likable versus unlikable characters. And of course, characters don't have to be likable to be good characters. Mm-hmm. But I tend to like a lot of unpleasant characters. But I would not use the word likable to describe her. But I wouldn't call her unlikable either. It's just I just found her absolutely compelling, though, from the very beginning. And I was so fascinated, even watching it a second time, to the point where I was just kind of leaning closer to the TV, like, from moment to moment, to see. It's a fantastic performance, first of all. And I was just so wrapped up in in what she was doing and why she was doing it. And I could empathize also, like you said. And for me, the scene that really, really works is that finger scene, which out of a lot of memorable moments in this movie, that scene is just absolutely exquisite, I think, where I just go from being kind of this overwhelmed, sort of horrified, like, she's not going to do this, to where I really want her to do it. Like, I really need her to, like, eat that finger. I'm so like, not happy, but I'm just like, go. I'm like, exhilarated for her when she does. And I think a lot of it just has to do with the way that she is, the way it's shot and the way that it follows her story and her movements so closely. There's something almost claustrophobic about how close in we are with her as a character, if that makes sense. Something like almost voyeuristic about, like, I'm thinking of those scenes where she has that rash and
oh my god,
there's something that is that's not the most gruesome thing to watch. Certainly, there's something about the way it's shot, and she's under those blankets and she's itching and itching and itching, and you're so close in looking at her, and it's just repressive almost, like how intimate it feels. So I'm not sure, my thoughts have kind of gotten away from me, but I found her compelling, and I found the story very compelling from start to finish.
Now, Lydia, you growled.
No, don't characterize it like that. I just had a really hard time getting in with her character or getting in her headspace and empathizing. I did not find her that relatable or notice any sort of like character arc or growth. I mostly didn't understand why she was at vet school. If she was going to be that way, like be so squeamish or be like, I don't know, naive about how youth culture is. I don't understand why she was so sheltered.
Well, she was only 16, right? So wasn't she like kind of like a prodigy almost? Like she got into the school early, I think.
Well, that's still not making her any more relatable, because also being asked to identify with like weirdo child geniuses who like aren't properly socialized is not fun or particularly enjoyable. I think this is my main complaint, not with her character necessarily, but like this genre of horror films, is I don't know what cannibalism works, like what it, as a metaphor, how that works. Like it couldn't be some other sort of monstrous affliction. Because if this is a movie about, say, sexual awakening, we don't quite get the kind of like body horror. I mean, there is a ton of body horror, but it doesn't feel like appropriate analog mapping on metaphor. Not that that's a fun way for people to watch horror movies. I know people definitely complain about horror movies are just metaphors, but it definitely didn't work. There was too much like grossness, but not in the way that I think they meant it to be gross.
Yeah,
I was not happy about her having sex with her gay roommate, to be clear. So, I was like, don't leave him alone.
He was such a decent dude too.
Just leave him alone. He doesn't like women. Just go fixate on somebody else.
Yeah, I think kind of the reason I was not. I feel like you have to. You can have empathy for a person, but they have to like be like a person. That's a weird way to just. But at the same, but like she doesn't feel like a character. Like she doesn't feel like a person. I mean, the only people who don't have empathy are robots and Republicans, and she was, So it's tough, but she doesn't. None of the characters in this really feel like actual characters. They kind of feel they're just these kind of block. They're not even like stereotypical, just to kind of move the narrative along. They're just these kind of block people, and I would feel empathy for her and her struggle if there was any sort of personality that she had. I don't know who Justine is as a person, and I guess that's kind of some of the thing that she's exploring in this, that where she's trying to understand who she is as a person, but I still think that there should be some sort of personality there that we can latch on to, and I just don't feel like it's there. And I felt the same way about most of the other characters, like and that made it just kind of feel I just was never able to really feel for any of the characters, and it just kind of moved along, and I don't know. There's just something very distant and very aloof about this movie. This is the second time I've watched it, and I felt the same way both times. Where it's well made, and I don't have any problems with its technical prowess, but I think narratively, it's just it just feels very hollow, and
her relationship with her sister didn't seem to like make sense or be consistent, or it's like, what do we need them to be in this scene together now? Like now they're fighting, and now her sister's being mean to her, or like now they're getting drunk on a rooftop together.
Now they're peeing.
Yeah. And I'm like, why? What is their relationship?
Yeah, but I just felt like that was like a typical competitive sister type of relationship. Like if you think about it from the older sister's perspective, like she is the older sister and she goes to this vet school, but all of a sudden her younger sister is showing up like in her territory. So it's like, and her younger sister is looking to her older sister to kind of show her the ropes, but her older sister is too busy being competitive with her to really do that.
I don't understand why she would be that way if like her older sister found out like when she got to vet school that she likes to eat people. I don't understand why she would treat her younger sister the way that she does, or like not warn her. I mean, obviously it's for the sake of the movie, because you wouldn't have a movie if her older sister looked out and was like, oh yeah, by the way, first time you have meat, you're gonna want people.
Yeah, like I read this movie more as a metaphor for addiction, because I think when you go into an environment like that, like vet school, college, I mean anything like that, when you're away from your parents, then that's when you try things for the first time. And so her sister is clearly already addicted to eating human flesh, and she introduces it to her sister, who also gets addicted to it. And so, what the scene that really kind of solidified that for me was the end, whenever Justine realizes that her sister has eaten her best friend, and she still, like, she's obviously upset, and she holds what is it? It's like a spear? No, it's like a
ski pole.
A ski pole. She like holds it to her forehead, and you think like, is she gonna like stick it through her forehead? Like, what's she gonna do? But she ends up like picking her sister up and washing the blood off of her body. Like literally gets in the shower with her and washes her body. And it kind of reminds me of like someone who is helping someone else through an addiction. Like you're trying to get them to still function as a human being, and it's like a person that you love and you care for, and you're kind of seeing them spiral out of control, and you're still trying to help them pick up the pieces. And also she visits her sister when she's in jail, and her parents are kind of like, oh, this is how it is, you'll find your own, like her dad's like, you'll find your own solution to this. And so that's like kind of how I read the movie.
But I just didn't see them having a loving relationship where she would stick around to help her piece of shit addict sister like be better, because their relationship before that like just was totally antagonistic and competitive, and like
Yeah, but I feel like that's, I mean, I don't have a sister, but I feel like that's how sister relationships can be. Like you're still competitive with them, but at the end of the day they're your sister and you love them. Like,
I think it comes down to I don't respect just being family as a reason to stick by someone who treats you poorly.
yeah.
I was like, oh no, don't understand that impulse.
Right, which, I mean, that seems like a very, like, personal kind of thing, but, you know.
Well, I also feel like, at least on the sisters' end, not Justine's end, the sisters, like, she seems to have a system in place. Right. And I feel like her transition from having a system to eating Justine's friend and being imprisoned was it didn't seem like there was any build up to that. Like it seemed almost like this 180 where you could see Justine falling off the rails and doing something, but it seems like the curtain was supposed to be pulled and it was actually the sister. I just didn't see where her
loss of control,
the system that she had in place, where she just lost control. Like I felt like they both had the addictions, but clearly one of them had something in place to kind of keep her in line, and then she spiraled out for some reason. We never really felt like we got a reason what spiraled her out and caused her to do it.
Actually, that's interesting because I just watched it again for the second time the other night, and it had been almost a year since I'd seen it, and I misremembered the ending, and I did think it was Justine who had killed her friend. And so when I was waiting for the conclusion, and then I was like, oh, this isn't at all like I remember. And so that's interesting that I completely remembered it differently. And
I mean, maybe that's what matters, like the impression that sticks with you.
I think it would have made sense if it was Justine, because the movie was the narrative was leading up to her just having no system in place to control the urges that she had and the cravings that she had. And it seemed like the tipping point was where people were, she was getting recorded, chomping at the body that her sister was teasing her on, and I don't know. It just seems like it completely switched over from her story to this other plane, and then it ends, and I just didn't. I just felt like it kind of ended very messily.
It muddled what it was going for, whatever that was.
Yeah.
Still unclear.
Yeah, and kind of to the same point that we made talking about Happy Death Day. As a horror movie, was this a movie that frightened you? There's no real like graphic fear-inducing scenes. It seems like it's more just that uncomfortableness. I think Diana, that you had mentioned before, I think that's where the horror is kind of coming from. This more body horror.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the body horror, like the Cronenberg stuff.
There were several things that made me super uneasy throughout the movie, but none of those like actually had to do with cannibalism. Like rich kids being shitty to each other, like hazing rituals, like that's really scary to me. That hazing part is terrifying at the beginning, and it terrifies me and makes me really angry simultaneously. And that's also why I don't have any sympathy for Justine. Like, just don't participate. Like, Jesus, go back to bed.
But her sister told her she had to. I think that, and as far as the body horror, there's the rash, and then I
didn't like that.
She throws up the hair is just absolutely amazing too. I think just in terms of just being making me feel so uncomfortable and physically uncomfortable, like squirm inducing. So it's a different kind of. It didn't scare me, and I'm not scared that cannibal veterinary students are going to come and try and eat me at my house, but as the kind of horror it is, I guess. Just that body kind of horror, it works really well.
Yeah.
Horror is such a big, broad, subjective kind of blanket of stuff. So
now, Lydia, you weren't on the last episode, but I know that you've seen Jennifer's Body. I'm curious because I feel like there is kind of a similar thread of teenagers trying to understand themselves through these kind of supernatural elements in The Rage, Carrie 2, as well as Jennifer's Body and Raw. Did you see any kind of similarities or through lines through all those movies, or can you see kind of a kinship to the three of them that we've watched?
Yeah, I think it's not just like teenagers trying to understand themselves like through an encounter with something like supernatural, or I guess cannibalism's not supernatural, but something horrible. And I was kind of like, what did all of these movies benefit from having like a female director? And I'm like, oh, it's the relational thing, right? Because Carrie 2 has her like really adorable best friend with the matching tattoos, and then Jennifer's Body, like that's all about this like really inappropriately close. I mean, not inappropriate because girls liking girls, but like inappropriate close, like they're toxic to each other, close friendship. And I think Raw is going for this like sister relationship, and that's what I think women directors kind of bring to not just teenager movies, like specifically these horror movies. Because I don't know, the way young girls kind of do come to understand themselves is relationally. Maybe that sounds sad. Like not just totally individual, but like an individual who is also connected to other people. And so even if you are isolated, like dealing with something horrible, it turns out you're not. Your sister is also a cannibal, or has to deal with like supernatural horrible urges. I don't know. But I just didn't think Raw was necessarily as successful as Jennifer's Body and Carrie 2.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, and I think that like you said, it speaks to kind of having that female voice there, because we talked about Happy Death Day earlier, and I mentioned like I felt like that's
she doesn't have like a close best friend.
Yeah, and that's kind of her character, where she's very isolated from everybody else because she's done that to herself. But there is, I mean, I feel like the characters in all of these movies are kind of isolated, but they do have this at least one person that they have a connection to, and I think that to your point, that understanding that's something that can help and propel these characters, it is something that's vital. And I think that, I don't know, do you feel like it kind of makes for a much more engaging horror movie because you do have that backbone of a shared relationship or whatever, or friendship that can kind of make a lot of these, nuanced narrative points at least feel much more authentic, or at least engage with you a little bit more.
I mean, not just horror, but like almost any movie, like really understanding how characters relate to each other and not just expecting us to like the main character because it's the main character, but like showing them interacting with other people in a way that feels authentic. That's really important. And like doing it for teenage girl protagonists, like I just like seeing that regardless of what genre it's happening in, because it is still sadly not the kind of a rare thing.
Oh, I kind of like that she's, even though she has the relationship with the sister, it's kind of a lone wolf story. And now I'm thinking I kind of like isolated female sort of stories, actually. I'm thinking of like Morbid Caller is one of my favorite movies, and that's just basically Samantha Morton not talking to anybody for 2 hours. But I don't know. There's something kind of inscrutable about all the characters in it, and her in particular. And I just wonder if that's by design. Maybe we're not. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I just kind of liked. I liked the sort of detached, clinical almost way that it was filmed and observed. There's something that's so objective about the filmmaking, and I tend to get really like emotionally kind of wrapped up in things, and this isn't a really emotionally touchy-feely kind of. There's nothing really sentimental or endearing about it, and but it worked for me. It was just kind of fascinating to me. So
yeah, so I think a common thread with Raw and with Jennifer's Body and just most female-directed horror in general is that the young female protagonist is given agency usually as the monster, so to speak. So, like, in Jennifer's Body, like, Jennifer gets more power when she becomes the, like, demon succubus thing. Like, she is the one who is in charge in the sexual relationship. And in Raw, it's kind of the same with Justine. Like, whenever she is losing her virginity as a cannibal, she is the one that is in charge of that relationship. And so I think it's interesting because it's also sad. It's a sad commentary on our society because that's the only way that a woman can get, like agency in the sexual relationship is if she's the monster, which gives her the power. So I think
But what I liked about Jennifer's Body is like Needy. There's two like female protagonists, right? And they complement each other. So I think it also takes a female director to like show that dynamic that you mentioned there, but also like provide an in-movie critique at the same time. Like there are alternatives. Does that make sense? There's
I think
a
that's
nuance
a good point
being
too.
captured.
No, you're good. No, that makes sense.
I feel like that's a great place to end. But does anybody have some final thoughts on Raw?
I just want to close with I love the camera work in this. I also love the score by Jim Williams because that cue, that like music cue with the organ, like whenever she is chewing on the finger and she's like has that like hungry look on her face is absolutely amazing. And like I just really like this movie, and I think like also Ducournau's parents are both surgeons, and so it makes a lot of sense to me that she would want to study the human body, and that I think that her like film style really speaks to that as well. So in general, I just really like this movie, and I think that people should give it a chance, and they shouldn't be freaked out about the fact that it's a cannibal movie, because it doesn't have as much shock factor as people think that it would.
It's remarkably restrained for a cannibal movie.
Yes,
your mileage may vary, but it seemed pretty tasteful for a cannibal movie.
Tasteful.
Yes, very tasteful.
Well, if you're curious about watching it, it is on Netflix right now, so you can catch it there. But you can, if you're interested in learning more about Cinematary, you can find us on social media. We're at Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter at handle @Cinematary, and on letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we post all of the movies that we talked about in this episode. Like I mentioned at the beginning, our next series is going to be on Nicholas Ray, the director, so another directed by series. This was one I think was in second place, very close to being our directed by last year. Instead we did The Archers, but I know Nathan is very excited that we'll be doing Nicholas Ray. The lineup for that will be In a Lonely Place, The Lusty Men, Johnny Guitar, Rebel Without a Cause, and Bigger Than Life. And it's going to span throughout the month of November, but looking forward to it. These are a couple movies I know for sure. Johnny Guitar and Rebel Without a Cause have been entries on our Young Critics poll for a while now, so it's good that we're finally going to be talking about them. We're just going to do them, so it's I'm excited to watch those, but please, at the beginning I mentioned all of that writing, please go through all of our October stuff, check out the video essay, and then check out our festival coverage. Like I said, we have a big one on the Toronto Film Festival, but we also have the Knoxville Horror Film Festival, with the big shout outs and props to Central Cinema and William and Nick and all those guys for their help. Of course, we had our live podcast earlier this month, which we were very happy with. So hopefully we'll have another one of those in the future. But until then, thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week.